What's up everybody, another beautiful day in Azeroth, and today I wanted to talk a bit about the new DPS spec Devastation Evoker. So I'll be covering potential builds, rotations, how to play, and how the toolkit works, so you'll get a smoother Evoker start. And I also urge you all to check out Jereico.com, which has pretty much everything you'd ever need to know about Devastation Evokers, both in pre-patch, leveling, as well as max level, with in-depth guides and information in a very digestible format. Now, for any Drakthir whelpling who hasn't seen anything about Drakthir or Devastation, I'll start with a quick introduction to the spec, class, its abilities, and how it all works. But if you already know this and just want to learn about builds and rotations, skip ahead a bit. So, the Evoker class is, as they say, a mid-range class with extremely high mobility, as well as utility. You're able to buff players with 15% reduction to movement abilities, so stuff like Blink, Disengage. You have a raid cooldown to give everyone a free cast of their movement ability, and they can rescue players, picking them up and dropping them off somewhere safe. AoE stun, AoE knock up, AoE knock back, AoE roots, can remove bleeds every minute, restores healers mana, and even off heal if needed. So just a bit of utility. Oh, and a 1.5 minute 30% damage reduction that lasts 12 seconds. Oh, and you can have 2 charges of it, just in case you were ever close to dying. Oh, and there's Bloodlust as well. They do, however, only have 25-yard range, so I guess that's the trade-off of getting literally the entire spellbook. And they can also decrease AoE damage taken and increase movement speed for your party. And the Devastation spec has a very interesting DPS rotation and toolkit with new empower spells, which you can hold down to increase their rank and change how they work, ranging from more targets hit, more burst or sustained damage. And if you ever needed to know anything about Drakthir, is that you can pretend to be Deathwing and swoop down on your enemies. And in Dragonflight, you'll be able to do this whilst being transformed into a critter. Just saying, do what you will with that information. Now for our DPS toolkit. As far as generators goes, we have Living Flame and Azerite Strike, and they generate in the form of having a chance to proc Essence Burst, which makes your spenders free. Outside of that, you passively generate essence to spend and can gain more through talents. So, generators. Living Flame, which is considered red magic, long cast, single target damage and or heal, as you can heal with it. Azure Strike, which is considered blue magic, is an instant cast, no cooldown, 2 to 3 target cleave, depending on talents. And for your spenders, you have blue magic Disintegrate. You channel a beam into an enemy, takes multiple times over its channel. Pyre, which is red magic, lob a ball of flame that goes kaboom. And then there's our empowered spells, which is Fire Breath and Eternity Surge. Fire Breath is your standard dragon frontal cone that deals damage and applies a dot. Depending on rank of empowerment, it either has a longer lasting, harder slapping dot, or does more damage up front with a lesser dot attached to it. Max it out at rank 4, it'll do a ton of damage instantly, but less over time. And at rank 1, the reverse is true. Then we have Eternity Surge, which deals a ton of damage to a target, and it will hit additional targets depending on its empower rank. 4 targets on rank 4, and it can be improved with talents to hit twice as many targets, up to 8. Lastly, we have Deep Breath and Dragonrage. Deep Breath, pretend to be Deathwing and rain fire upon them. Dragonrage is our main cooldown, if you will, which instantly fires off 3 pyres and makes it so that we have 100% chance to get Essence Burst free cast from both our generators, allowing us to either spam out pyres in AoE or disintegrates on single target. You can also talent so that it triggers our mastery at 100% regardless of target health. So for me, at the moment in beta raiding gear, that'd be around 60% damage increase during Dragonrage. And to top this off, you will spec into Animosity so that your empowered spells extends Dragonrage by 6 seconds, which you can fairly easy extend by 24 seconds, even more with better gear, Bloodlust, Power Infusion, stuff like that. So with that out of the way, let's go over the builds a bit as well as how it works in practice. Due to it being pre-patch, we have access to fewer talent points, but there are still plenty of builds we can make focusing on either AoE, single target, or a little bit of both. Taking a look at a more AoE / dungeon oriented build, we'll start off with the red magic side of things, where we have dense energy so Pyre costs less, volatility so that Pyre has a a chance to flare up and explode again on a nearby target for more AoE. Engulfing Blaze so that Living Flame deals 40% more damage and has a longer cooldown, which we will have instant cast for anyways. Then we have Heat Wave for more Fire Breath damage and Font of Magic for an additional Empower rank, so up to rank 4. Burnout so that Fire Breath has a chance to make Living Flame cast instant, which synergizes well with Engulfing Blaze damage increase. Then we have Leaping Flame, which makes it so that Fire Breath increases targets hit by Living Flame per Empower rank, so that we can cleave with the instant cast flames. Then we have Feed the Flame so that consuming Essence Burst procs reduces Fire Breath cooldown by 2 seconds. Fire Breath slaps tremendously hard, especially on AoE, but it also empowers Living Flame to be instant and cleave, as well as extends Dragonrage during it. So getting more Fire Breath CDR allows us to extend Dragonrage a lot more often. Now moving on to the blue side of things, we have Eternity Surge, Arcane Intensity for single target, or Lay Waste for more AoE. Arcane Intensity increases our single target spender damage disintegrate, and Lay Waste increases our AoE burst cooldown's damage. Then we have Essence Attunement, so we can have 2 stacks of Essence Burst freebie casts, so we don't have to instantly spend them as soon as we get them, which smooths out the rotation and allows us to pool resources for smaller burst window setups on both AoE and single target. Then we have Eternity Span, so that Eternity Surge and Shattering Star hits twice as many targets, so that we can fire off Eternity Surge on up to 8 targets, and possibly specking into Shattering Star for low target cleave, which is a big slap that hits up to 2 targets, and increases their damage taken from you by 20%. It works way better on single target or 2-3 target cleave, as you'll set up small burst windows into this. For heavy AoE, you can take Onyx Legacy instead, reducing your Deep Breath cooldown down to 1 minute, and combine that with, for example, Lay Waste instead of Arcane Intensity, you got yourself some pad. You'll also pick up Charged Blast so that our blue damage spell increases our next Pyre's damage by 5%, stacking up to 20 times. And since we'll be spamming Azure Strike as a generator on AoE, it'll build up to 3 stacks per strike, so it can stack up pretty fast for some big Pyre blasts. And then we have Causality so that Essence abilities reduces Eternity Surge cooldown by 1 second. Furthermore, the cooldown Dragonrage I mentioned earlier is something we talent into and improve with Animosity, so we can extend its duration with Empower spells, and Tyranny so that during Dragonrage and Deep Breath we gain maximum benefit from our Mastery, making Dragonrage an extremely powerful cooldown, as it's potentially an insane damage increase due to the Mastery portion of it, and then we can potentially stack it with Mastery Trinket or procs to further increase its value, especially since we can extend it by a lot. Makes for some fun synergy in gameplay. Now, as far as our class tree talents goes, the important talents to pick up are Leaping Flame, so that Living Flame strikes increase targets based on Fire Breath and Power rank. Protracted talents, so we hit 3 targets with Azure Strike. Blast Furnace, so Fire Breath dot lasts 4 seconds longer. And Tip the Scales, a 2-minute cooldown that makes your next Empower spell, Fire Breath or Eternity Surge, instant and at max rank. So you can instantly slap away a max ranked Eternity Surge on 8 targets or a big bursty Fire Breath. I'd also argue for picking up Obsidian Bulwark and Aerial Mastery for an extra charge of Obsidian Scales, our defensive, and Hover, our main mobility. And if you pick up Rescue, you can swoop down on a friend and drop him off somewhere else to help him out of a sticky situation. Or let's be real, so you control people endlessly throughout dungeons and raids, leading to an almost certain increase in cost of neural silencers on Auction House, and the collapse of economy as we know it. Now, other than that, you can just play around with the class tree, pick up more defensives or healing or cleanses, whatever utility you need. So how does all of this madness play out? Well, pretty straightforward once you've gotten a bit used to all of the new spells. My biggest issue was knowing what I needed to press but not remembering how the icon looked or where I bound it. But after that, so the basic rotation on AoE or 3 targets and up, you spam Azure Strike, spend Essence Burst procs and Essence on Pyres. Now keep in mind that each Azure Strike stacks up damage increase on Pyre, so you don't have to insta-smash Pyre as soon as you have an Essence Burst proc or enough Essence to fire one off, as you might as well spam more Azure Strike to fish for an additional Essence Burst proc, until you have either 2 stacks of Essence Burst, capped Essence, or 20 stacks on Pyre damage increase, as you for sure want to slap those away. Now, to complicate things just slightly, we add in our Empower spells. On AoE, you want to use Eternity Surge on different ranks depending on amount of targets you're facing. You'll hit 1 to 2 targets extra per rank rank depending on if you've spec'd into Eternity Span or not. So if there's only 4 targets, it's a waste to fire off a max rank Eternity Surge that hits 8. It'd be better to hit rank 2, save some time. Fire Breath, on the other hand, as I've mentioned, deals either upfront damage or damage over time depending on ranks. Higher ranks deals more upfront damage, and low ranks deals damage over time. So if you need a lot of AoE burst, or if targets won't be alive or a damage increase won't last that long, then you want to use a higher rank of Fire Breath. However, if they'll be alive for more than 24 seconds, you can just fire off a rank 1 Fire Breath and spread the dot instead, which also allows you to get more instant Living Flame procs from burnout, among other things. Now, the only time the above rules, if you will, aren't true is during Dragonrage due to the extends. When Dragonrage is up, you want to extend it for as long as possible, and due to this, you want to fire off rank 1 Empower abilities during it, unless you use Tip the Scale for an instant max ranked Empower spell. And this is mainly to get those 6-second extends, and to not sit AFK empowering Fire Breath for too long, which is time we could spend spamming other things, because during Dragonrage you want to consume as many Essence Burst procs as possible to lower Fire Breath's and Eternity Surge's cooldown, due to Feed the Flames and causality, so that we can further extend Dragonrage. And the loop continues. Now on top of this, when you use Dragonrage on AoE, keep in mind that it will instantly fire off 3 pyres, and these pyres works with Charged Blast, so you want to, if possible, have 20 stacks of this before you pop Dragonrage for some juicy burst. So how that would look in practice is something like this. If possible, have 1 to 2 Essence Burst procs ready, 20 Charged Blast stacks, and then you pop Dragonrage. Rank 1 Fire Breath followed by rank 1 Eternity Surge into a Pyre Blast. Only spend Essence Burst procs on Pyre, not regular Essence, as only Essence Bursts reduce Fire Breath cooldown. Then you want to spam Azure Strike to generate new Essence Burst procs, which has a 100% chance to proc during Dragonrage. And as soon as you're able to Fire Breath or Eternity Surge again, you want to do so on rank 1, and you can also use Tip the Scale to make 1 Empower cast even faster if it helps extend, or if you just want to fire off an 8 target Eternity Surge during your cooldowns, without having to AFK a bit for it. So most of the time you just alternate between Azure Strike and Pyre, Azure Strike, Pyre, Azure Strike, Pyre. And as soon as Dragonrage ends, you go back to the aforementioned rotation of, again, Azure Strike spamming for Essence Burst procs, spending them and Essence on Pyres, and Empower Eternity Surge or Fire Breath as mentioned earlier. For single target, the only thing that really changes is that you use Living Flame instead of Azure Strike and Disintegrate rather than Pyre as an Essence spender. Then lastly, we have Deep Breath, which will be either 1 or 2 minute cooldown depending on build choices. You can also spec into this so that it stuns targets for 3 seconds, making it not only a very bursty AoE, but also helps with ad control. And you can get out of sticky situations with it as you get immune to crowd control. But more often than not, you just want to go rawr and rain fire upon your enemies. Now swooping over, I want to talk a bit about a more single target oriented build. So for this, the big difference is that we'll spec out of most of the red magic talents, so no Pyre or Living Flame improvements, and no Fire Breath cooldown reduction, and no Deep Breath stuff. And instead we get Catalyze, so that Disintegrate increases Fire Breath tick rate by 100% while we channel it, so that Fire Breath slaps a lot harder on single target. Scintillation, so that Disintegrate has a 15% chance per tick to fire off a rank 1 Eternity Surge at 60% effectiveness, making you slap away a ton of Eternity Surge pretty much on every Disintegrate as there's multiple ticks per channel. We'd also pick up Shattering Star for more single target damage. Shattering Star itself deals a ton of damage, but it also increases the target's damage taken by 20%, into which you can dump essences into and spam Disintegrates for little burst windows. We also talent into either Focusing Iris, so that Shattering Star's damage amp lasts 2 seconds longer, or Arcane Vigor, so that Shattering generates 1 essence. I am personally a fan of the essence generation on pre, as it smooths out our rotation a bit, since our essence regen isn't as good as it can be due to lacking a few talents. Possible that good gear fixes that during pre-patch, but seeing as it's not that long till Dragonflight releases, I'd go with smoother rotation with low gear and talents. We'll also get Hoarded Power for some RNG spice and everything nice. 20% chance to not spend Essence Burst procs, so you can back-to-back spam Disintegrates in the Shattering Star windows, for example. Then we'll take Spellweaver's Dominance so that our crits are 20% more slappy. And the last 2 points are a bit flexible, if you will. You can put it into Charged Blast and Eternity Span for a little bit of cleave, or Titanic Wrath, so Essence Burst empowered spells deals 15% more damage. So for this, your rotation would not change a whole lot from the aforementioned single target rotation. You'd spam Living Flame to generate Essence Burst procs and spend them on Disintegrate. You want to play around Shattering Star just a bit, so rather than instantly disintegrating as soon as you get an Essence Burst stack, you instead want to disintegrate if you're about to cap on Essence, or if you have 2 stacks of Essence Burst and Shattering Star has more than 5 sec cooldown. Otherwise you save it, so that when you Shattering Star, you're able to pump out 2 to 3 disintegrates into that damage taken window. Now if you want to min-max this a bit or play around with it, you want to clip your disintegrates right after the 3rd tick rather than wait out the entire channel due to pandemic effect, meaning that the last tick of disintegrate will be added to the next if you clip disintegrate with disintegrate, nothing else. So normally it would tick 4 times, but if you cast disintegrate after the 3rd tick, your new disintegrate channel will tick 5 times instead. But other than that, use Fire Breath and Eternity Surge at appropriate ranks, which on single target will most likely be rank 1. Now all of this being said, there's few pure single target encounters at the moment outside a few raid fights when the moat affix isn't up, or I guess PvP-ish. So if there's a few ads, make sure to pick up Charged Blast and Eternity Span for some extra AoE damage with this build. But if there's a lot of AoE or Council style cleave with 3-4 targets constantly, I'd recommend doing the AoE build instead. And I'll also include Jereico's M+ build as well in the description below, which is a mix of single target and AoE, so like my AoE build but without Fire Breath, Cooldown Reduction and Living Flame talents, but slightly more single target damage. On max level, we're able to more or less combine all of these builds for a much more effective dragon, as well as other builds focused even more on AoE or single target depending on how many targets a fight have. We can pretty easily swap between single target, 2 target cleave, 4 target, etc. with just a few talent swaps. And the last topic at hand, which is stats, covenants and legendaries in Shadowlands. Now as far as stats goes, if you care about it during pre-patch, Mastery, Haste and Crit then Verse is most likely the way to go. But it's hard to say for sure without extensive simming and gear setup for pre-patch, which to be fair feels a tad pointless. And as far as covenants goes, they all give us the same ability, which is Boon of the Covenant. This heals you and increases your versatility by 10% for 12 seconds. So any covenant choice you make is based on what soul binds you'd like, and there's really not a huge difference between them. Night Fae will most likely work very well as all of the binds are good. An extra mobility in the form of soul shape is always nice. Not needed, but hey, I'll take it. And finally there's legendaries. Now there aren't any evoker legendaries. Cue sad track their noises. But you can, if you feel like it, craft the non-spec / class based Leggos for some buffs. So Unity gives 5% more damage, Echo of Eonar with the damage healing increase proc, stuff like that. I for one won't be crafting Legos on my Evoker, but each to their own. And yeah, that's pretty much it for how to play your dragon, the Devastation guide. Hope it helps you out on your Evoker adventure. I want to remind you all of Jereico.com once again if you really want to dig deeper into Devastation Evokers. Let me know how the start of your Evoker adventure is going. Any Dragster hypers in chat? Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. And I'm pumping out a lot of videos right now. I stream progression and testing on Twitch, Stankie Gaming. Make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me, my work, and my goal of upgrading my computer. As a patron, you get access to the Stankie Gaming Discord, where you can get help with anything raiding related. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.